issue, so obviously we wish him well. So I have just about 6:30. I'll give it one more minute and we'll get started. Jared, are you all set?
Yep, all set.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board meeting for October 5th, 2020. The first matter on the agenda tonight is the minutes of approval for September 24th. Anybody have any corrections or comments on the minutes for the 24th? If not, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain, Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I was not present.
Okay, so it was myself, Caleb, and Russell, and Bob. So Russell, you agree? Okay, so we have 3 in favor for the minutes. So the minutes have been approved. Thank you. Okay, so for tonight's meeting, we had a request from Mr. Attorney Jeffrey Brown, is if we could take the matter out of order for Westford Street, only for the matter to let Mr. Jeffrey Dirk speak. I know Mr. Dirk has to attend another meeting. So I indicated personally, I don't have a problem with opening the meeting up for Westford Street, hearing what Mr. Dirk has to say, let the board members ask any questions that they might have. After we address Mr. Dirk only, close that meeting, go back to Rogers Street, and then we'll go back to Westford Street. Do we have any problem, any board members in agreement with that? Or anybody have any problem with that, or is that acceptable to the board?
No problem.
I think that's acceptable, Mr.
I
Chairman.
can't in the middle of the meeting right now.
I just technically though, Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we would
Dick or Charlene?
close.
Suspend it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I should use-
exactly. Thank you.
Okay,
Yep,
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Suspend the meeting. That way we have a chance to hear from Mr. Dirk, and that way, try to be transparent as much as we can, listen to what he has to say. I know Mr. Brown has requested that, and I said I'll do what I can in my favor to hear from all parties, as I always try to do.
Sure.
So at this point in
And
time,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
George Theodore, I have no problem with that. Everyone
Okay.
has schedules that are conflicting. Jeffrey Dirk is well respected, and
Yep.
he has been hired on many occasions to conduct peer reviews for the city of Lowell. We just want to point out right here that Jeffrey Dirk has been hired by Princeton Properties in this fashion here before the board, and Princeton Properties has been an opponent of ours to see that our application fails. So in that light, I just wanted to mention that to the board.
okay, well,
Otherwise, I have no problem.
okay. So thank you. Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to open up the meeting, and I'm going to read the notice for the Westford Street project, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dirk, let him say what he has to. I know we've all received the copy of his letter. Let him explain on anything in detail he wants to explain, and give the board members an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to read the notice, which is a site plan review and special permit, 1201 Westford Street, Full Harvest Moons, Inc., seeking site plan and special permit approval to open a recreational marijuana dispensary at the above address. The property is in the office park zoning district, and the use requires site plan review approval under section 11.4.2, subsection 8, and special permit approval under section 12.4.0, and any of the relief that requested by the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear from Mr. Dirk if we can.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and I appreciate your indulgence in taking at least a portion of this matter out of order tonight. So
You're welcome, sir.
you have a copy of my letter in your files, and I'll
Yes.
keep this brief. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the applicant's traffic engineer, and I think it's been productive. And I think that you'll see, based on the brevity of the letter that I had provided, and certainly with assistance from the city's transportation engineer as well. I think that between the three professionals, at least we've arrived at what we believe is a reasonable estimate of the amount of traffic that the project will generate. And so therefore, my letter, it more or less echoes Natasha's email to you as well, which I think is a good thing, in that we've kind of at least come to agreement on what we believe would be a reasonable way in our minds of having a project with appropriate conditions. And I think that's what the board was looking to try to accomplish. And I think the applicant, the same way, was looking to try to come to some consensus on some way to come up with some reasonable conditions that the board could place on the application. And so what I wanted to reiterate is, I think from the standpoint of traffic, both the applicant's traffic engineer, the city's traffic engineer, as well as myself, have kind of noted the variability in terms of the amount of traffic that could be generated. And the planning board obviously is concerned with just making sure that public health, safety, and welfare from the city's standpoint is maintained for any projects that the planning board approves. And so we're in agreement with Natasha's recommendations in terms of traffic monitoring. And I think the board was heading in that direction anyway. So now that we're able to quantify what the amount of traffic may be that would be generated, the board can obviously see how that traffic might impact what has been documented as, roadways that clearly have high traffic volumes, have, a high crash location, and roadways that have narrow width to them as they exist there today. So we think it's reasonable, as Natasha suggested, is to have a traffic monitoring program. And I think she suggested 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years, just to quantify, verify and check back against the amount of traffic that has been predicted to be generated by the project. So it gives some feedback to both the applicant as well as the city. The other part of it is the traffic operations plan. And I think we started talking about this at the last hearing that I was testified before you. Potentially looking at not only the monitoring, but the monitoring more or less tied with maybe an appointment-based system to begin with. And if the monitoring program shows that there's no issues with respect to either the way the site is operating, the parking demands, or the amount of traffic that's generated, then potentially having the monitoring program allow for the appointment-based system to be eased or increase the number of appointments that would take place. And we really think that the monitoring coupled with an appointment-based system would allow for the facility to open, be operational, understand the amount of traffic and the impacts that might be associated with it, make sure that the mitigation has been addressing any unintended consequences with respect to increased traffic and parking demands. And then, as I said, as we get more and more operating conditions and potentially other dispensaries opening and the traffic kind of disperses itself, to ease off in terms of any needed appointment-based system. I would note that in other cities where there has been an appointment-based system, it has basically been phased out because these types of facilities do tend to settle out. And so it's typically found that as you couple it with monitoring, that what will be produced is something that shows that, the appointment-based system may not be needed, especially as other dispensaries come online. So that concludes what I have to testify before the board this evening. And I appreciate the opportunity for being taken out of order tonight.
You're welcome, sir. We appreciate all your help. You've been very helpful to the city and us in the past. I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
So at this time, let me ask if any board members have any questions for Mr. Dirk.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just a clarification, Jeff, just on that condition of the appointment only, based on Natasha's recommendation, she says if at 3 months traffic exceeds the trip generation estimates by 10%, switch to appointment only and reevaluate traffic mitigation for the surrounding neighborhood streets. I just want to make sure that's what you're in agreement with as well, not opening up with appointment only. Is that correct?
No, I think Natasha's recommendation is right on. I would agree with that. I mean, let them, the applicant does not want to operate a facility that's going to cause any issues, because it's going to cause, it not only will cause an issue for the city, will cause an issue for them as well. And so that seems like a reasonable approach to suggest that let them get open and operational. The police department will certainly have a lot of say in terms of the operations plan. And then I think that, you know, to the extent that it causes a problem, this gives you that fallback again, so that you're able to protect the community.
Sure, good. All right, thank you. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Mr. Bichette. Any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Dirk?
I have none.
No? Anybody else? Caleb, Chene, Russell? No?
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. I think I'm pretty clear on what the impacts are, and I'm glad that the traffic engineers are in agreement.
Thank you.
Chene or Russell, any comments? No? Okay, no questions?
for Mr. Dirk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Me neither. Thank you.
Mr. Dirk, I got notice the other day that the market baskets open up on this Friday.
I saw that as well. So yeah, yes.
Which I know you're very much involved with, and I know
Yes.
through this whole thing on Westford Street, you never once mentioned the word trade.
No, I did not.
You never did. Everything you wrote, everything you said on the 2 meetings that lasted 2 hours each, you never brought that up. But
No,
I just have to
yeah,
thank you
we've
for
had
your
it.
help on those
Yes.
bodies in the past.
We all know about the road bridge, so yeah.
Oh, you know this body as well as
Yes.
anybody in the city. I know that. So I'm gonna
Mr.
thank you for
Chairman,
that.
could I ask a question
Sure.
of Mr. Dirk?
Yeah.
Mr. Dirk, given these uncertain times with respect to retail businesses closing, we have an uncertain period of time out there for traffic and collecting data and comparing traffic data to what you are customarily used to doing. So do you think that 3 months is an insufficient period of time to collect that data? Wouldn't it be better for that condition to be imposed to collect data over, we'll say, 6 months or a year?
I think one of the things that's happened with respect to especially the retail marijuana is that their business is not, from what I understand, has not slowed down. I've worked on a number of dispensary locations, and they've been one of the, I don't want to say that they've been a beneficiary of what's going on, but certainly their business levels have not dropped off. In fact, we've had kind of the opposite, especially in locations that are closer to the New Hampshire border, which this being on Route 3 might experience somewhat of an increase. I know the ones in Salisbury in particular, I know that had picked up a lot of business from New Hampshire. And so I think given the nature of the use, the 3 months might be appropriate, but what you might find is that in 3 months, you're not going to show too much. But I think that from the standpoint of the monitoring, it's not too much of a heavy lift because you're just looking at your driveways.
But if 3 months, we're not going to show too much, and given the fact that there's going to be 2 dispensaries opening up Route 3 in Tingsboro, other dispensaries will be opening up in Lowell.
Right.
Wouldn't it be to take a better picture of this traffic over a period of 6 months?
Can I just offer something, Mr. Chair? Can I just offer something? The first recommendation from Natasha is to do 3 months, then 6 months.
Right.
So we do have, what's being recommended is also a review at the 6-month interval as well.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And then 1 year, a year and a half, and 2 years, which I think all seems appropriate. But I just offer that up, Attorney Theodore, that's all.
It's only, Mr. Frechette, I don't want to see, my client prejudiced by a 3-month study that doesn't really articulate, a true picture of the traffic out there. When you take it over a look and have it say that it spikes 10%, and then based upon that, have them go back into and impose something that would be appointment only.
Well, I think
based on that, that's too small a snapshot.
George, I think that's for the board to decide. We asked for Mr. Dirk's recommendation. He gave it to us. We asked for Natasha's recommendation. They gave it to us. I think the ultimate decision will come down for what the board's going to decide after we hear you again at length. I'm sure your meeting's going to take a long time because the last 2 took 2 hours. I just opened it up for his recommendation. Chevy explained what the recommendations are. He said what his recommendation is. You've asked him twice, and as far as I'm concerned, it's been asked and answered. So if you want to argue
Thank
that,
you very
as we go
much, and
through-
thank you.
no, but as we go through with the meeting, obviously you can pick that up. And I understand
Thank
where
you.
you're coming from. It's just what his recommendation is, what his thoughts are, what the board had a couple of questions on, what Natasha's are, but ultimately that will come back to the board. And that's even if the board, whatever the board ultimately decides, whether to approve the project, approve with conditions, or deny the project. So if it's denied, you won't have to worry about the 6 or 3 months. But who knows what's going to happen?
Thank you for allowing me to ask the
Yeah.
question.
Oh, no
I
problem
appreciate
at all.
it.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions? If not, Mr. Dirk, if not at this time, I'm going to suspend the hearing and go to Rogers Street project. That
Thank you
acceptable
very
to the
much,
board?
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Brown, you're very welcome. I have no problem when people ask me to do things to try to help more transparency with the board. I know you requested that, and I didn't think it was a big thing to request to go out of order. Everybody has busy schedules. We try to accommodate who we can, and sometimes if it was myself or somebody else, we have a distract schedule. We try to reschedule stuff, but we know how things work. But you're welcome. I appreciate your request. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point in time, we're going to move on and open the meeting to 671 Rogers Street. Excuse me. So we have a site plan review and special permit for 671, 683 Rogers Street. Pure Lowell Inc. is seeking site plan review and special permit approval to open a recreational marijuana dispensary at the above address. The property is in the regional retail zoning district, and the use requires site plan review approval under section 11.4.2, subsection 8, and special permit approval under section 12.4.0, and any other relief requested by the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Joe Claremont, representing Pure Lowell Inc. With us this evening are the principals of Pure Lowell Inc., along with several members of the team available to answer any questions that may come up. At our last meeting, we made our full presentation, but there were some areas that needed some clarification and some further information. And I think 4 specifically we wanted to address with you tonight. And I always like to start with the easiest one, so that's what I'm going to do. The first issue was that we hadn't yet received the police department sign-off for our meeting on July 20th. On July 22nd, we did receive that sign-off, and that's been submitted, so I think that is all set. Secondly, the board was interested in seeing a streetscape rendition and possibly different materials for construction. That's been done and that's been submitted for discussion by the board, and certainly the applicant is willing to hear what the board has to say in terms of materials, and certainly what the DPD may have to say, because they're not married to any particular materials, but they did submit that streetscape. Thirdly, the plan needed to be modified to provide a more defined pork chop island at the exit to the site, to require the exiting traffic to take a right out of the site, and also to add a sidewalk in front of the entire site, which has been done. And fourthly, the plans needed to be reviewed by Mass DOT to review the entrance and exit to the site. The plans were submitted to DOT. We worked with DOT. They've undertaken their review and they've responded. Number one, DOT has indicated that the pork chop island for a no left turn out of the site is appropriate. With the signage, the island must provide for pedestrian access, which it does. And then thirdly, the exclusive left turn lane into the site would not be required per the DOT. This area was a little source of confusion because initially they indicated no left turn would be appropriate, but they were considering no left turn out of the site. We asked for clarification, and on September 30th, we got an email from Sarah Timiner of DOT indicating that the left turn prohibition out of the site was appropriate. Additionally, an exclusive left turn lane into the site will not be required due to the limited right of way, etc. So I think that issue has been clarified. They're no longer looking for, and never really did, a prohibition about a left turn lane into the site. And at this point, I'd like to ask our traffic engineer, Ken Cram, who did the discussions with the DOT to fill in some details for the board, if he could.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, with the extension of time, it was beneficial because we were able to make our submission, receive initial comments back from Mass DOT. There were a number of comments, all pretty much all minor in nature. These comments, I believe, were also submitted in part of the board's package. But we also, as part of our submission, we had asked Mass DOT to opine on the left turn lane possibility, and which they did, as Joe said, in Sarah Timoner's email. One thing that mostly changed, actually, is the way Mass DOT wanted the sidewalk path, as we call it, to go through the island. Because if we had kept the sidewalk path right at the curb line, the island would have gone away entirely. So what we ended up doing as a modification to the plan is about 25 feet east or west of the driveway, we actually angled the sidewalk into the site, and then created a path, which would be a level path. We'd go through the end of the island that was actually into the site, and not the pork chop part that we are using to help channelize and force the flow turning right out of the site. And we had submitted that back as a sketch, and they said that was acceptable. We gave them some grades just to show that it could be done, and that as you may be aware, any project on a state highway, when you have a new curb cut, the drainage has to be kept on the site and not go into the state system. So that's why we regraded the driveway just a little bit in that area of the path to show that. This has all been resubmitted about a week and a half ago, and we are just waiting for any final comments before Mass DOT issues the permit. As of this morning, with any application that comes into Mass DOT, all the departments within the district office review the application and review the responses. But as of this morning, no comments had yet been received back in the permits office. So we're still in a waiting pattern as to when this will happen. But based on my experience, I would expect, probably in less than a week or so, we would have final comments, and they would go on to draft the permit and then issue the permit. So that's pretty much summarizes what we.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that summarizes the additional information we wanted to present to the board tonight. So I think I'll leave it at that and open it up for the questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, before I open up the board, I will open up to the public and think if anybody tonight would like to speak in favor of this project. In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. Anybody like to speak in opposition?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Peter Osella, actually, I'm not speaking in opposition. It just took me a while to get my microphone.
Oh, that's okay. Whatever you like to say, Peter, that's acceptable. Fine. You don't have to be in opposition. Any comments would be fine.
Yeah, it's just that we understand MassDOT looked at the turning situation there. I just want to say on behalf of a number of folks from the Belvedere Neighborhood Association that there is a lot of skepticism that this isn't going to be a problem. So I hope the board will at some point, keep an eye on, or the city will keep an eye on what actually transpires once this opens without any turn restrictions. I think a lot of this is going to back up to the intersection by Milan Pizza at Douglas and Phoenix or down there. So anyway, we asked for that to be looked at. It was looked at. I'm not sure how it was looked at or whether anybody from the state came out, but that's in there. I just think it's something that will be a problem in the future, and we want to make sure it's sort of on the record that that's a concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasella. Anybody else like to speak?
Yeah, I would like to speak.
Sure, just give your name, please.
My name is Elias Saad. I own a Sunoco station down on Phoenix Avenue, the corner of Rogers Street.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe address, please? Okay, yeah, okay, we got you, okay.
711 Rogers Street, the
Thank you.
Sunoco station.
Yeah.
All right. Taking a left out of 38 into the property is going to be disaster for everybody down there. It's going to back up the traffic. It's going to be big mistake to be made, sir. Because it's not even like 50 feet before you make the left into that property. There's a traffic light right there. And after 18-wheeler, they're going to be making a left on Phoenix Avenue, going down to these properties in the back there. It's going to be craziness to make the left turn to that property. You got to find a way to enter that property and get out of the property on making the right out on 38 again. Left turn is going to be a mistake, big mistake.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And I've been doing business on 38 for 22 years. There's a lot of traffic down there. And even I read the traffic report that you guys submitted and was done on February 26th this year, which we didn't have enough traffic because the situation of COVID-19. And until now, we don't have the proper traffic on the highway because school did not open up and a lot of stuff did not open up. Imagine we're going to go back to normal life and everything is going to open up again. This street is going to be crowded as you cannot believe it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Anyone else? Okay, at this point in time, I'll turn it over to the board members.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, go right ahead.
Just for clarification, Attorney Claremont, just going back through my notes from prior meetings and the material, it's my understanding that the facility will be opening up by appointment only and would be subject to the Lowell Police Department, or the City of Lowell, I should say, I'm sorry, agreeing to then allow to lift that requirement. Is that correct? Was that something you were offering up?
That is correct, Mr. Frechette.
Okay, no, and that certainly is, we have another project before us where they're looking to open up without being by appointment only, then therefore requiring a robust monitoring program to determine if it needs to go to appointment only. So we're starting out with the most restrictive manner in which to control the flow to the site. And then it would really be subject to the City of Lowell lifting that requirement. So I think that's important to clarify. I do appreciate the renderings that were submitted. I think we've improved from what at least I thought the original renderings were, and I understand they were looking for more of a modern look. For myself, with the streetscape, I prefer the what would be considered, I believe, rendering number 2, which is the flat roof with looks like some sort of wood composite on the both the facade facing Rogers Street and the parking lot as well. I think that has a much better look than the rendering number 1. Rendering 1 almost reminds me of what the original McDonald's looked like further on down the street, way back with the roof line. And so I think the materials are an improvement, and I think the overall design is an improvement based on what we were looking at initially. So I appreciate that. That goes a long way in really helping it so that it. I understand wanting to have a little bit more of an upscale look, but it has to fit into the neighborhood. On Ontario Road, and it's a gateway into the city. So I think it's important, the aesthetics of that. Appreciate that, along with the landscaping plan. We got clarification. I appreciate the clarification. I think the communication from MassDOT was very confusing. So I think that was extremely helpful. And I think we discussed redesigning that pork chop exit so that it was more pronounced to make it that much more difficult for someone to make a left-hand turn, which MassDOT agreed with. So at this point, I'm satisfied with what has been proposed. I just have a few questions to clarify. Now, we did clarify the snow removal. Is that correct? That would be snow storage and snow removal if in fact was needed. And I believe, were you going to have drop-off and dedicated spots for Uber and Lyft vehicles?
Yes, that was added to the plan as well.
Approved. And I think, Mr. Claremont, I think you've basically addressed what the concerns were initially. Again, we were deferring really to the traffic engineers and MassDOT regarding Rogers Street. MassDOT had really the final say on that. And certainly understand the concerns of the residents. I would, to Mr. Arcella's point, probably not looking at the same type of schedule, but I would like to have as a condition a revisiting as a condition of the proposal here is to revisit the traffic conditions after the appointment only restriction is lifted, just in order to have some sort of monitoring component in the proposal or the approval if the board so wishes, so that in case there is, God forbid, more of an issue than MassDOT is even forecasting, that we would have some mechanism in place, some monitoring to review that. So we can discuss that as far as the interval, whether it be at 6 months after the appointment only restriction is lifted, or 1 year. But I think it would be important to have some sort of a revisit of the activity in and out of that site. That's my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Any of the board members have any questions, comments?
I have.
Yes, Mr. Lockhart?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, other than the Uber Lyft designated parking, traffic engineer also pointed out that should have some kind of bike storage facility. Has that issue been resolved?
It has, Mr. Lockhart, and the bike storage and the ride share parking has been added to the plan. Dedicated area.
I couldn't see it. All right, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Any of the board members, questions, comments?
I do not think I have any. I think everything's been covered, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Russell. Janae, any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I would just agree with most of Jerry's comments, but I do appreciate the renderings and the streetscapes that were provided by the architect. And I think both solutions would be an acceptable solution. I understand maybe articulating the roof line a little bit more could be interesting, but I think either could be a good solution, and just appreciate the work that was done. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I only have 1, 2 questions. I think these might have been answered. Attorney Claremont, I know looking back from staff comments now that go back to July 14th, it was to talk about the sidewalk out front. I know you're going to address that issue. Could you address that for me, please?
Yes, the sidewalk's been added to the plan. That was also a recommendation or requirement of Mass DOT. So that's been added. There will be a full sidewalk across the entire site.
Okay, thank you. I know we talked about that in the past, but I wasn't sure what the final outcome was. And, like I said, back to some of our staff comments from July 14th to try to update myself again on all the comments. So, okay. think that covers most of my comments. I think the, if my memory serves me correctly, the main thing was we wanted to continue the matter to hear what Mass DOT had to say about the turn in and out because it's a state road. And obviously, we know that we don't have any control over 38. We've learned that in the past with projects from with Hannaford and also Market Basket. Leah. I have no further questions on that. Any of the board members have any follow-up questions?
I have none.
Okay. All right. What's the request of the board if we have no further comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the petition with the following conditions. And I know it has been offered, I just would to state that in the form of a condition that the facility will open by appointment only, to be lifted by the city of Lowell when deemed appropriate. That the city of Lowell, the applicant will work with the city of Lowell to review after 6 months of the appointment only, lifting of the appointment only requirement, that the activity to and from that site will be reviewed and to determine whether or not it needs to go back to appointment only based on any accidents or any kind of issues relative to parking and exiting and entering the site. The applicant, I do have a preference, and if the other board members may have some concern, but I would approve it under the proposal that we would approve rendering number 2 as far as the overall look of that building. I would, the condition would be that the applicant would finalize materials with the DPD, but again, under the design of rendering number 2 as presented by the applicant. And I believe in the site plan that they've addressed the issue of the pork chop block and in the sidewalk. So from that perspective, Mr. Chairman, that would be the motions that I would be putting forward.
Okay, just for clarification, do we have any discussion? Sinead, do you have any comments on the renderings? I know you're an architect on board, so well, obviously we like to reach out to our board members for their expertise. So could you enlighten us on what your feelings are on that, if you don't mind?
No, I thought that both renderings were appropriate. I didn't have a strong preference on one over the other. I just thought that both would be acceptable and appropriate. There were some small details that were different between them apart from the roof line, but I think that that having rendering number 2 and working with the DPD makes sense.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
That's second by Mr. Lockhart. I know Caleb is not voting on this, so all in favor say aye.
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 The chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none. So that motion is approved. So Mr. Fischette, I think we need site plan and special permit.
Yes,
So you want to put that motion in first and we'll do the site plan first with those conditions. Is that acceptable?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, put that in the form of a motion.
Okay. So obviously, Mr. Lockhart, that's okay for the vote on the site plan with those conditions are accepted?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And so now the vote for the special permit. Mr. Fischette, you want to make the same motion with the same conditions for the special permit?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and put that in the form of a motion.
Okay. Is that still acceptable to Mr. Lockhart?
Yes, and second.
Okay, Mr. Lockhart, second. So all in favor, say aye.
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 So on both matters, the site plan and the special permit have both been approved. We wish the applicant well. Hopefully things work out. Good luck. Thank you very much, Attorney Claremont, for your assistance in this matter. It was a big help for the board to get to see what the state's going to do on Roger Street. Obviously, when we have no say in the matter. I know the last time you'd prefer if we had voted first, but I think coming to a resolution after we know what the state has to say gave us a little more guidance, and we appreciate you patience with that, and thank you very much. We appreciate it.
And I thank you, I thank the board, and also thank you to DPD for all the help they gave us on this application. We very much appreciate their assistance and guidance.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very appreciated.
evening.
Good evening. Okay, we're gonna move back along, and we're gonna reopen the meeting again for Westford Street. We did open it briefly, and then we suspended it. So I'm gonna read the notice again. So it's a site plan review and a special permit for 1201 Westford Street. Full Harvest Moon Inc. seeking a site plan review and special permit to approval to operate the recreational marijuana dispensary at the above address. The property is in the Office Park zoning district, and the use requires site plan review approval under section 11.4.2 special permit approval, and under section 12.40, and any other relief requested by the Lowell zoning ordinance. As indicated, we did open the meeting up at the beginning of the hour at 6:30 when we started the meeting, and then we suspended it so we could hear from the traffic engineer, Mr. Dirk. So therefore, we're back on this matter, and I'll turn it over to the applicant, please.
Mr. Chairman, Attorney George Theodora, 133 Market Street, appearing on behalf of the applicant. I want to thank the board for their patience in this matter. We've been going on with this since July. And we hope that tonight that we don't go over 2 hours. We hope we can get everybody back out of here to watch some of the Patriots game. So what we would like to do is we would like to limit the matters which we believe are the issues at hand and to address those specific issues. There was some confusion that was brought up by a letter from Princeton Properties with respect to our parking. We had clearly indicated in a letter from the landlord that shows and illustrates how we have 33 parking spaces, and there's a parking agreement. It's a license agreement. Nothing was redacted from that agreement. When it was filed, it was completely transparent. We filed it with the board that shows that we have an agreement which we're paying for 15 parking spaces across Carl Street in a lot behind us. Those 15 spaces are for employees. The application itself, in accordance and substantiated by DPD, the memo from Jared Alves, indicates that we comply with parking, that we comply with all the parking requirements of a dispensary, in which requires 1 space for every 500 square feet. And if we take a look at 4,000 square feet, that would be 9 spaces. We have 33 dedicated spaces on the site itself, and then 15 spaces behind us across the street on Carl Street. Now, since we comply with the parking, I just want to make one distinction on this, in that there is a provision in the ordinance that if you do not comply or conform with the parking requirements, there's an ability for an applicant to petition to have parking within 400 feet of an entrance. We do not conform, nor do we come under that part of the ordinance. It's not mandated that we have the 15 extra spaces. That we did that to show that we would be good neighbors and to alleviate parking for everyone. Conceivably, it is our position that we could go ahead and shuttle our employees in from anywhere and bring them in to alleviate parking. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that we conform to the parking requirements and we have further mitigated parking by doing that. Also, there was discussion that we ended it with trying to get some guidance from Natasha, and we had the benefit of her memo here, and how we're going to calculate and do the traffic counts based upon the gross square footage. And we had made an argument that we're not going to use the entire 4,000 square feet that we have on the first floor, but we needed to lease that entire space there for security purposes and for access into the facility and to leave the facility to have the entire floor. However, we did submit a floor plan, again, to try to mitigate traffic based upon a square footage of 2,500 square feet. We had submitted that to the board to show the board that, well, we can operate at 2,500 square feet, where a portion of that first floor, we would pay rent for it, but it would be essentially unused and mothballed. And we had Mr. Ken Cram of Bayside Engineering perform traffic counts based upon those two scenarios. And we presented those to Natasha and the board. And Ken will go through those. And she did mention in her memo of September 23rd that that we had determined trips based on the actual square footage, one being the 2,500 square feet, the other being the 4,000 square feet. And she found that our approach was acceptable. Now, with that being said, I'd like to have Mr. Cram go ahead and to discuss the parking based upon these two scenarios for the board, which are parking calculated and done based upon gross square footage, one being the 4,030 square feet, the other being the 2,500 square feet. So Ken, if you would go ahead and address that for us.
George, I will. Graham, Basin Engineering for the record. George, you mentioned parking. We're talking about traffic generation.
Right, I'm sorry. I want to go right ahead.
No problem. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. We've already gotten to the crux of the matter. Now we're backing up a little bit as to how we got to the crux of the matter. And just for the board's knowledge, what we did after the last hearing is I reached out to a number of my colleagues who have prepared studies for dispensaries, asking them if they had any data that they had collected at any dispensary in Massachusetts after it's been open and operating for a while. And as you know, Mr. Dirk referenced counts he had done in the Millbury facility. And I was able to get two other facilities, one down in Fall River and one out in Hudson, Mass. And what I did was I took that data and created a giant spreadsheet, which I shared with both Jeff and Natasha before she left, unfortunately. And what it showed was that the morning, the numbers actually went down. The ITE numbers, the Institute of Transportation Engineers numbers actually went down, but not too concerned with the morning commuter peak hour because, as we know, we're not open during the commuter peak hour. The evening peak hour went up a little bit, but the commuter, the peak hour of the generator, the highest hour that the dispensary would generate traffic, was virtually the same as the ITE numbers. And the same for Saturday. Saturday was actually a couple of points lower, but all in all, the data, the ITE data was comparable with the three new sites that were added to it. And that's what they generated. So what we did then was we applied those numbers to 4,000 square feet because that's the entire first floor that's going to be usable, but not necessarily necessary. And we did a comparison analysis to if it was only 2,500 square feet. And basically, it's the same levels of service, but like I said earlier, the actual calculated delays and volume to capacity ratios when you compare the 2,500 square foot to the 4,000 is they're just slightly higher. But we then Natasha in her memo went on to identify 3 points for the monitoring and the estimates and the transportation demand management program, which we concur with. But as Dirk had indicated, he also agreed with that. But I'm going to differ with him slightly on a 3-month horizon, only because I found historically, when a new type of project comes to town, there's a big novelty associated with it that you don't have with, let's say we put another Burger King in there. Everyone knows what Burger King is. Everyone knows their food. Um, and, you don't get the same kind of increase initially that you do when you have a brand new type of use. And these dispensaries are still relatively new. My inclination would be we start the monitoring at 6 months and then do 1 year, 1.5 years, and 2 years, and see what the results are. But I will leave that up for the discussion by the board. In terms of, excuse me, sorry, the Transportation Demand Management Program, we have developed an extensive program. As you know, it has been vetted by Mike Allen with the police chief. And we have proposed subsidized passes, LRTA passes for our employees, and encourage them if they want to take public transportation. We'll have bike racks on the site, and we will make sure that the sidewalks, particularly the ones on Western Street, which are right in front of the site, make sure that they are ADA compliant. So that's all I have to say at this time on that particular issue, and I'll be glad to answer any questions when it's appropriate.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, that we've addressed the issues that we felt that were pertinent, that were left last time with respect to traffic, especially in the parking. So if the board wants to ask any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the public. Before I do that, I just want to make a comment that we did receive several letters from different people in the neighborhoods, which are all in file, and I believe all the board members have read. Just want to let you know that all those letters that did come in, we addressed it. We mentioned several of them in the past, and we received, I think we received a couple since the last meeting. So those matters are in the file, and they've all been documented. I believe they've been read by all the planning board members. So at this time, I'm going to open up the public. I'll open up, all in favor, then any in opposition. And then if some people just want to make comments, that's fine too. They can go on as just comments in particular. So at this time, I'll just start it briefly with anybody like to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. I'll move along to anybody who'd like to speak in opposition.
Mr. Chairman.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Jeff Brown with Princeton Properties, 1115 Westford Street. So I have a few concerns, but I share George's sentiment that we should make this brief in the hopes that maybe we can get a chance to see some of the Patriots. I guess my biggest comment is, George is right. We've been at this since July, and I was going through all the notes, and the traffic volumes have gone all over the spectrum. We started at 7:13 with the initial traffic reports by niche. Then Bayside came in at 582. And then Natasha came in at 1,022. And now at this somewhat hybrid 2,500 square feet, we're at 632. I don't know how you create the hybrid, but it is what it is. So my point is, I don't think we really know what is going on with the traffic here other than it's excessive. And so I'd like to get to the primary point that was raised in Natasha's original email of September 9th, in which she says, given the existing congestion and volume of traffic within Lowell, this is a reasonably conservative approach to trip generation. So her point is, you can look at the ITE and, there aren't many studies out there, and that's fairly well recognized. And Mr. Graham raised an issue that, he's looking at more studies and more studies. But in my opinion, if you're gonna adopt the concept raised by Natasha, which is you assume the most conservative approach, then in my opinion, we're taking this situation or this proposal the absolute wrong way. Just as the Rogers Street proposal was just before us, they started out with an appointment system because just like us, we don't know how bad that traffic is going to be. And then we use the analysis, the monitoring, the trueness of the situation to adjust accordingly. But here, we're just going to open it up, going to be loaded with traffic, and then we're going to adjust backwards. We just seem to be attacking this situation backwards. I don't know any other logical approach than to suggest that. And I think Mr. Cram, hit this nail right on the head when he said, I think his phrase was, there's a novelty aspect of this when it initially opens up. And I think he's exactly right. There's going to be a novelty aspect that the highest traffic volumes we're going to see is right when this thing opens up. And so I don't understand the logic of opening it up without appointments, waiting 3 months, suffering excessive traffic, congestion, volumes on roads that everyone on this panel would recognize are strained at this point, that we're going to add at the lowest 582 vehicles, at the highest almost 1,100 vehicles, that we're going to take this chance that, well, maybe the models are wrong. 500 vehicles speaks for itself. So I just think that approach is wrong. I would ask the board to consider adopting the approach that you used in Rogers Street. Do an appointment system initially to start, use your 3, 6, whatever period of time that you believe is appropriate to assess these traffic volumes, and then relax. To open it up and then relax afterwards seems, or open it up then impose afterwards, just seems entirely backwards to me. I say that in the sense that I think Mr. Frechette raised these issues before when we were looking at the criteria for special permit and site plan review, that traffic flow and safety are issues, maximizing pedestrian and vehicular safety on the site, to the site and egressing from it, are criteria that are part of both the special permit and site plan review. I think the other points to raise in that respect are, we already have a traffic intersection with Technology Drive that all the traffic engineers have recognized is a high traffic volume, a high crash data intersection. We are going to add somewhere on a peak hour at the lowest, even on Mr. Cram's hybrid model, around 76 vehicles an hour. On the original model, at using the full square footage of 4,000 square feet, 122 vehicles an hour. So we're adding vehicles to an intersection that's already recognized with high crashes. So again, to attack that system backwards and say, let's just open it up and then close it down, I just think doesn't make sense. And again, it's undisputed that based on the traffic report that Mr. Cram put out, that, we are going to have increased queuing at these intersections. They have his notes, 2.5-minute backups at Wood Street, 5.5-minute backups at Tech Drive, and 3 minutes at what he calls Drum Hill Ford. So these are significant backups to a road that is already constrained on Westford Street, and Carl Street is a barely passable two-way street that we're going to add 40% of those 122 vehicles, so somewhere in the 50 vehicle per hour range. So, I don't profess to be Jeff Dirk or Ken Cram or a traffic expert. I'm just an attorney trying to put together some common sense here. So, when you recognize the traffic safety of the neighborhood is a critical component, of what you do on site plan review and special permit. Just seems to me consistent with Natasha's note. You start off with the most conservative approach, just like you did on Rogers Street. Put the appointment only system in, use your 3-6 month period to adjust accordingly. The other point I'd like to make is I did send in a letter regarding the parking, and I'm respectfully, I don't understand what George's comments were to clarify that, but the point was very clear throughout many of our discussions during the summer, July, August, that there was insufficient parking on this site. There were 51 parking spaces, I remember. 15 were already dedicated to Trinity Ambulance. That knocked you down. And you have 7 employees per hour per day working. So you're down somewhere around 29 spaces, or lower. And in their own application narrative, they say at peak hours, parking is going to be needed in excess of 30 spaces. So that's what they said. So to say you satisfy zoning at 9 spaces is inconsistent with their own narrative. I don't understand how they would say they're going to have 9 customers. I don't know how often, every 10 minutes. It doesn't make any sense. And also, when you look at Mr. Cram's peak vehicle trips, I believe it's somewhere again between 76 and 122. You're again well above this 9 figure that Mr. Theodoro is suggesting is compliant. And so you needed the 15 spaces. Everyone knew you needed the 15 spaces. And so you went out and you tried to get them. That's what you did, and that's logical. However, if you read that commercial parking license agreement, which is intended to satisfy this whole parking arrangement, it's not a absolute right to have 15 spaces forever and a day. It's quite clear. It says the term of this lease, both the licensee and the licensor, meaning Full Moons and the owner of the property, have a right of termination of this license agreement with 90 days notice by either party, with or without cause. So this group could literally open on January 1, have their 15 spaces. The owner gives them 90 days notice for whatever, that business picks up. COVID, brings more people back into the parking lot, and the 15 spaces are gone. There is no absolute right to those 15 spaces, as was claimed. And so I think you have a real issue there with parking. It's not resolved by that lease agreement. And so I just think that is a significant health and safety risk that presents for the entire neighborhood. So now you've got people parking on the sides of Carl Street, parking in other commercial businesses, other apartment communities throughout this small area, because the parking is insufficient. So those are my primary points. And again, stressing the criteria that's set forth in your site plan review and special permit. I just don't feel that criteria is being met. I don't think you're significantly impacting this neighborhood by this excessive amount of traffic. 1,000 vehicles per day is being added to this neighborhood. There's queuing or backups along the intersections that stretch from Wood Street and Westford Street, stretches, and no one wants to say it, but all the way out towards the Rourke Bridge as these intersections back up at Princeton Boulevard, and then the next street down and all the way back to Stedman Street. So, yes, we are in a butter. Princeton isn't a butter to this property, but we also have 1,000 units of apartments in this immediate area, all impacted by these traffic congestions. And we've heard from all the neighbors that are very, very upset about the amount of traffic congestion. So when you look at your site plan criteria and you're supposed to protect the health and safety of residents by safe traffic flow and safety and parking, and to maximize pedestrian and vehicular safety, I think this project is lacking in those regards. And, you know, the impact to the neighborhood is obvious. You know, Carl Street cannot handle 60 additional vehicles in a peak hour. If you drive down there in the morning, I drove down there this morning, go to work every morning. I have to pull over because two F-150s are coming the other way. Add 60 vehicles to that at 4 o'clock. It's not hard to figure that one out, in my opinion. So it would be my recommendation to the board that until this parking situation is resolved, that they not approve this permit, that to the extent the board is considering approving the permit, I would suggest the conservative approach suggested by Ms. Vance and implement an appointment-only system to begin with, and then relax it over your monitoring periods, 3, 6 months, and thereafter, whatever is at the discretion of the board. But I think to approach it as you're just going to open it up, this novelty aspect, as Mr. Cram alluded to, it's going to be packed, and then back it down, or then apply your appointment only is just the backwards approach. So those are my comments and recommendations to the board. I do appreciate your patience. George is correct. It's been a long, drawn-out process, and I know some of these meetings have gone 2 hours, so I appreciate everyone's indulgence and attention to this matter, and I'll answer any questions, or those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Appreciate it very much. Anybody else like to speak in regards to this project?
Yeah, this is Erin Bradley, 39 Carl Street. And I've spoken before, and I just want to echo everything Mr. Brown said and say I'm still opposed to this. I just want to add, you know, Mr. Brown was talking about the safety of residents. And I'm a runner, and even to get from our building already before this facility gets put in and onto a safe area where I can run, which I have to sneak around to the parking lot beside our building, walking on that street is already dangerous as a pedestrian. So when you're adding more cars, it's just a bad idea. So I would agree that, you know, at a minimum, there should be appointments only for the first foreseeable amount of time until you can determine what the real effect is, and then go from there if the board is looking to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, this time I'll turn it over to the board members. Any of the board members have any comments, questions, concerns?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So it really is unprecedented to have the way the applicant's traffic engineer and the abutters traffic engineer and the city's traffic engineer really got together, absent really any industry standards across the country and locally, and to really come up with an agreement as to what the proper approach was, despite anybody's efforts to cloud what came out of that. So I tip my hat off to everybody involved. What I will say is, going into this meeting, I was inclined to go along with the recommendation from the consensus of at least Natasha and Jeffrey Dirk, but the applicant's traffic engineer this evening, along with council, clearly made it a concern that they've basically testified before us, hey, there's going to be a surge when we open up. And by the way, it's not going to be fair if we monitor that within the 3 months, because it's going to be busier than usual because it's a novel. So right there, that sold it on me. I think it's going to have to open up from my perspective as appointment only. And I would basically put in a similar type of monitoring plan as we've did with the previous application. Again, I think the testimony before us this evening confirmed that even the applicant themselves, the representatives, feel that the reason that's unfair is because there is going to be a surge when this. So I think it's incumbent upon us to then address that. Jared, if you could, I mean, we can get into, or we can slice and dice the parking all night. If Jared, if you could just confirm, and I looked at it, it does meet the zoning requirement, and we could just stop with that with that analysis. But does it meet the zoning requirement, Jared?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. That's all I want to know. And by the way, it exceeds that by quite a bit. Now, the only thing that we're slicing and dicing is how much does it exceed by? And what is going to be the impact? We don't know. So it meets and exceeds the parking, and they did provide additional parking. So I think any kind of a monitoring plan will then take that into consideration. So again, I'm going to repeat that. Regardless of what you heard here this evening, it meets the zoning requirement for parking. That case is closed as far as I'm concerned. It's just whether or not how much above and beyond that we want to go. So the monitoring plan will address that. And so I'm okay with that. I have to say, if I'm missing something, this is going on, we've got different material. Did the drainage get addressed on this project? And I'm sorry if we've got some communication on that, Jared. Did I miss anything on that?
Give me a moment and I will look back at those particular notes. It's been a little while. Let me just
Yeah, no, I've got stacked, and quite frankly, I think I've
My memory from the last meeting was that that was addressed, but I don't have it in front of me, so I definitely would defer to Jared. But I believe that the engineer addressed that at the last meeting.
Yeah, we can give Jared some time to look that up if need be,
Yeah,
if we
okay,
want to proceed
that's
on other matters. And
Yep, no,
if-
absolutely.
I mean, like I say, I have plenty of stuff that I'm looking through too, and I tried to review it all early this evening, but
Yeah,
as Mr. Brown and Mr. Theodoro said, we've been going at this for quite a long period of time.
That's
As someone said to me tonight, what do you have on the agenda tonight? I said, same thing we had on all summer long. It hasn't changed.
And by the way, Mr. Chairman, all three applications here this evening, if we have material for the last 3 months on. So.
That's what I mean. I said we have the same thing on every 3 months. Yeah.
So, and then I would be looking at imposing what the applicant has even offered as mitigating measures where it says the project applicant has committed to a number of transportation related. I would say we would incorporate all of those into any conditions in the form of conditions. And again, the monitoring plan, I would be looking to have it open as appointment only. And then we can talk about the intervals when we get to a point where a motion is made. So those would be my comments at this point. Once again, I've just got to compliment though all three traffic engineers that worked on this, came to a consensus on deriving to the numbers, going out and trying to get some local data on this so that it would have a little bit more relevancy. And this is really in its infancy as far as how do you apply traffic engineering to these types of facilities. So again, I applaud everybody's effort. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Gary, did you have a chance to look that up? If not, we can move on with board members and come back to you, whatever's more convenient for you, sir.
I did, Mr. Chairman. And the note that I have from the City Stormwater Review Team is that the project is acceptable as proposed with one change. The total infiltration trench depth should be 24 inches, not 18 inches, as shown in one possible interpretation of this drawing.
I'm David Fieldsen from Lamplex Engineering, standing in for Matt Hammer, and that's no problem. We can make that change.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay. So I'm going to move along with the other board members. Any other board members, comments, questions?
This is Member Gallivan. I just wanted, again, kind kind of to reiterate that there's been a lot of back and forth between all three engineers over the course of several months, and agree that we've been looking at the material pretty closely, but trying to get the most up-to-date information. But I do remember too that at our last meeting where Natasha spoke, or our last meeting where we heard this item, I should say, that the traffic generation at that point, she said, was really, I believe, and I couldn't find it in writing, but I think that she said it, so it might be in the notes, was I think less than a 2% increase of what the total street could handle in that area, and that was a really negligible amount. And I know that the numbers have changed since that point in time, but that's really ringing out to me that she felt that was kind of a negligible increase based on the volume that these streets see. So I just wanted to point that out. I feel that the applicant has done a lot over the last 3 months to address the concerns that have been brought up between what they're willing to do on site. And I would tend to agree too with Natasha's notes about the traffic monitoring program, about reviewing it 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and up to 2 years. And I think that would address any concerns, understanding that you might have to live with something for 3 months, but if it's going to be a negligible increase anyway, then I don't really see the issue there. And so I just tend to lean on Natasha's most recent communication dated September 23rd about really monitoring it over the course of the next 2 years, as opposed to implementing something up front, because if it's going to be negligible anyway, I don't see why you would implement it on day one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Ms. Galvin. Any other board members?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to concur with Mr. Burchett's analysis and to encourage the applicant to open with an appointment system. It only makes sense based on the testimony we've heard tonight, followed with a minimum of maybe a 2-year monitoring program that would monitor any parking issue at the same time. I think that's the most appropriate approach here. Just makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Caleb or Russell, any comment?
This Caleb. I still have a question. So I know that the traffic engineer on the applicants proposed that there's 2 versions right now with the 2,500 square feet and the 4,000 square feet plan. So I would like to know which one will the applicant ultimately commit to. I think, even though I understand that the applicant is saying that both would, well, that's what it's saying, but I mean, gross square footage is what it is. So I do want to have some clarification on that. And I mean, I also accept the answer that it could also depends, but then that will leave some more uncertainty on what I would decide.
Okay, thank you, Caleb. Does Attorney Theodore want to answer that question for Caleb?
Could he ask that question again?
Sure. He has a question on what square footage you're committed to. Before we had the lower square footage, if you used everything, or if you just used the smaller part of the building and not use the common way.
We would prefer to use the larger square footage of 4,030.
Yeah, right.
Because he was just curious which way you're committed, because I know we had talked about that last time, and it's gone around quite a bit since the last meetings, and Caleb was just looking at which way you were fine-tuning that.
I see.
Yeah, it makes more sense when you look at the security of the first floor, that we commit to the first floor, and for security purposes to control it. So we would like to use the 4,030 square feet.
Thank you. And I think with that said, I'm still undecided which way, whether we have appointment only to start, or but I think at the very least, I will stick with Natasha's monitoring plan recommendation. So that's my take on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Russell, any comment?
Yeah, Chairman, if I may. I just wanted to make sure, because this is going back to July, did the applicant commit to providing funds for to install a sidewalk on Carl Street or either doing that themselves. I remember it being, or I'm reading it over the DPD comment memo, and it was a suggestion because there is an existing desire line there where it's been treaded down. And then also whether or not the applicant included installation of bike racks in the front of the building, as well as Uber Lyft drop-off spots.
Yes, we have committed to construct the sidewalks on Carl Street. We had agreed to that at the outset, and we will discuss, we're committed to putting the bike racks in as well as the Uber Lyft area, but we have to get permission. We're tenants at this location, and we have to get permission from the landlord in order to do that.
Yeah, so generally speaking, I mean, I feel like I would lean on Natasha's comments as well and institute some monthly monitor, 3, 6, 12, 24-month monitoring plan. And if there's been a either crash increase rate or some sort of negligible or negative impact on the neighborhood, institute by appointment only system. That's generally where I'm feeling like I'm landing right now on this issue.
Thank you. So I guess it's my turn. So obviously I agree. First of all, I want to thank Natasha for all the hard work she's done. Unfortunately, she has left us, and I want to give her a lot of credit for all the time and effort she put in for the city of Lowell. I do agree with the traffic monitoring, with the plan. I do believe whether you start with the 3 months or the 6 months, I don't think it's a hardship if you do the 3 then the 6. I really don't. I know the applicant's not in favor of that, but I really don't see a hardship in that. I really don't. I mean, it's something, it could be approval of condition. If it's not approval of a condition, then sometimes some approval conditions are better than no approval, no conditions at all. I do know the traffic is tough up there. I've been up there probably at least 3 times, because every time we've had a meeting on this, I've gone up there and sat there. I sat in the back, I watched Carl Street. I know Carl Street's bad. I've sat there and I drive a small car. I drive a Toyota Corolla, and I have to pull aside when any car comes by. Mr. Brown, not even a Ford pickup truck. Another car comes, I pull my Toyota to the side. I mean, so, and that's without snow, and people park on both on one side of the road all the time. So I get that part. So I guess the big question that is coming down is whether by appointments only. I was leaning the other direction, but with the testimony tonight, I don't think it's a hindrance to ask to do with the appointment only. I really don't. And I also think, due to the fact that we did approve another project this evening on Roger Street, as everybody knows who've been watching. And it's been stated by all 3 of the traffic engineers that when other facilities open up, it's going to diminish the traffic for all the other ones in the city and the ones in the surrounding area. So if that one's opening up, we already have another one opening up. By the way, in the city of Lowell, as the people voted, we can only have up to 5 recreational marijuanas in the city. So if this gets approved, we'll have at least more than half already approved. I don't think by the appointment only would be a severe hardship. And I think if we went with the traffic and monitoring, and if we started with the more restrictive, with the 3 months, then we'd have a better chance to see whether we should expand it. If we waited for the 6 months, I think that'd be more of a hardship on the applicant to wait for the 6-month period than if we reviewed it in 3 months and say, okay, we don't need it. So testimony has indicated it's going to be a surge. There's a lot of bad traffic there. Everybody knows it. When we looked at the data given to us before, the amount of people sitting there in traffic to try to get out, 3.5 minutes, 2.5 minutes, up to 5 minutes, there's no doubt it's going to increase. When you try to come out of that Carl Street, I noticed myself, that's the longest wait I had to wait. And that's tough because you really have to wait till the street lights on Westford Street change for you to try to come out, because if that's green, there's no way you're coming out, that traffic flow coming out. No doubt, you do not get out until that gets to red, and then you're hoping on the right-hand side that the traffic flow is going to minimize to let you out, or someone's going to be generous enough to let you out. So I know that's a concern. It's behind the building. The narrow width of that right of way is not going to change. I know Natasha did mention, we could also think about measures might make that Westford Street Technology Drive intersection more safe, maybe some signage, some flashing beacons. She mentioned that. I also noted that planning board may accept money put aside for infrastructure improvements as they have in the past. But I think those would be matters as conditions that could help alleviate some of the concerns that we have to deal with under the site plan approval and under the special permit, especially more in the special permit with the health and safety there. I know it's going to be a tough spot. I think by monitoring property, I think we're going at it, but I think we're going at it in the right direction. That let's start slowly opening up. If we go without the 3 months or without the appointment, then we find out we have all these crashes and people get hurt. Then we're going to say, maybe we didn't do the right thing. And I think, I know the applicant's not in favor of that, but I think for a 3-month period of time, I don't think that's going to make or break the bank. If I'm wrong, then if we approve it with conditions, then they don't build it. They go somewhere else. Then something else may come in, as we know, and it may come in and may be worse because a lot of things that we know could be put in there by right, but we have no say on those matters. We only have say on the matters that come in front of us. We don't pick and choose what comes in front of us, but by digesting all the comments that we received by the planning staff, the police department, all the wastewater, all the other departments that get a copy of all of our plans, and most importantly, this one is the traffic was the biggest concern. I know I said in the past about economic. I wasn't concerned about that. I know the economic does come in under the special permit. What I should have said to make it clear was I wasn't concerned about the economic growth between the recreational considering facility and present properties because they both be paying a number of taxes. And I should have limited that and said I wasn't concerned about it. But really, to me, the economic is not the biggest concern I have. It's the traffic. And we know it's bad getting out of there. And I'm just trying to look at a reasonable way to approach this that hopefully we can approve the matter with conditions that are agreeable to all people. And hopefully, if we go a little bit slow, and then if things open up, and as indicated by Mr. Cran, they're going to open up in Tingsboro, they're going to open other places. As I said earlier, we already opened up another one in the city of Lowell. Who knows which gets open first, but that's going to bring the traffic down. So even with a 3-month period, that could come down. That appointment only could be gone before less than a 3-month period. But I think by moving slowly, it's the cautious thing to do, and that's just one opinion of one board member. Thank you. Does any board members have any follow-up comments or any discussion as a result of what I might have said, or what the other board members might have said?
Mr. Chairman, could I just have a clarification? Jared, hate to put you on the spot here, but from Natasha's email of the 23rd, that third bullet item, a transportation demand management program for employees and customers to reduce the traffic demands of the project. Do you have any idea what she was referring to, though, on that?
Sure. So a transportation demand management program would have a combination of incentives that would encourage people to carpool, to bike, to take public transit, to walk, use other means to get to the building other than driving alone. And all those sorts of techniques, there's a wide range of them, but essentially that's the objective, is to reduce the number of people driving alone.
Which is some of what the applicant has offered up in their mitigation measure. Okay, all right, just want to make sure. And then also on the, then her last comment, as previously noted, Bayside should evaluate what measures might make the Westford Technology Drive intersection more safe, signage, flashing beacon. I also noted that the planning board will offer to accept money put aside as escrow. Obviously, we haven't discussed that as part of the discussing this evening here, but I think what I would be looking to do is to tie that to the monitoring program if in fact it's determined that additional traffic mitigation is required by as a direct result of the operation of this facility. I mean, obviously, they're not the cause for the volume of cars that are out in front of that property at the moment, but obviously, if they, for some reason, and Sinead is correct, I think it was actually quoted, and Natasha had mentioned that the threshold of the traffic generated from here would not necessarily trigger some sort of signalization at Technology Drive in Westford Street. So I guess I would tie it more to the results of the monitoring program, where the applicant would work with the city of Lowell in possible mitigation measures, but I want to make sure we get clarification. That would be my comments, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Any of the board members, any further comments?
Also,
Okay. So at this point in time, what's the request of the board? There is a request for approval of a site plan as well as a special permit.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the, I think we'll start with the special permit. Approve the special permit with the following conditions: that the operation will open by appointment only, to be evaluated under the traffic monitoring program in 3 months after it opens, and then be performed at 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, and 2 years after opening. The also the applicant will work with the city of Lowell on any traffic mitigation measures that may arise as a result of the traffic monitoring program. And then the applicant.
Could I ask one question, Mr. Frechette, through the chairman? Would it be possible to limit the appointment only to the first 30 days and to have that monitored and reported to the Lowell Police Department, and to have a recommendation from the police department? Would that be something that the board would entertain?
I would defer for discussion to the board members.
So, Jerry, I think now I think what the issue here is that we need both a robust monitoring program while at the same time like a reasonable appointment only period, right? So like assuming that the traffic can be, is at a reasonable level, I think we need to find a balance between the two. So if they want to cut it short on appointment only, then we need a more robust like traffic monitoring program. But I mean, if they have a longer time that we can appointment only, then maybe we can reduce the the frequency of the monitoring program. That's my take on this. So it's either I think the key point is still to make sure that the impact, any bad impact to the neighborhood will not be like have to have a waiting period until it's time to resolve them. So yeah.
There isn't any other discussion, any other comment?
I have a comment. I think 30 days is not enough time to really give it a good evaluation. I think 60 or 90 days is needed to really get a true measure of the impact of an appointment-only system.
I agree with Mr. Lockhart. I don't think 30 days is sufficient. I'd go for the 90, or if need be, if people want to compromise, at least go for 60, but I wouldn't go lower than 60. I think
Oh.
2 months would be at least minimum. I'm leaning towards the 30. I mean, the 3 months, but to try to do a compromise. But 30 days, I don't think would be sufficient. I really don't. But I'd be comfortable with the 3 months for the mitigation. Maybe go down to 2 months at the least, but I'd be more comfortable with the 3 months.
Could we
me as well.
compromise that
3 months,
days, Mr.
90 days. Yeah.
Any of the board members have comments on those?
So, Richard, did you say 90 days for 3 months?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
recommend 90 days. I think
Yeah.
that would give us a true measure of what's happening there.
Yeah, and then open it up at that point, and then you know, if in fact the impact is negligible, or then it'll come out into the monitoring program.
Yes, exactly.
I think given the sensitivity of that site, I do think it's a reasonable approach, and I think we have every right to make a reasonable conditions on the approval of a project. So,
Sure.
thank you for the input and the discussion. I would go with my original condition on that. And then add the applicant will work with the property owner and install a bike rack on the property. LRT, and the next condition, the applicant will provide bus subsidies to those employees who use the LRTA to get to and from work. The applicant will the applicant will fund restriping the crosswalk across Technology Drive and adding appropriate manual on uniform traffic control devices, intersection ahead signage on Westford Street, approaches to the intersection. The applicant will work with the city of Lowell to retime the traffic signal at the intersection of Westford Street and Lowell Street. I guess that's not correct. That would be, I believe, oh, yeah, Lowell Street. Additional capacity analysis were performed. No, okay. That's just the result of that. The applicant will assess the sidewalk and curb cuts on Westford Street, see if they meet ADA requirements. If so, the applicant will update the sidewalk and curb cuts to conform. And I think we just confirmed as well this evening that the applicant will also repair the sidewalks on Powell Street as acceptable by the city's engineering department. Final stormwater approval by the city's stormwater review team.
All right.
And I believe that that addresses the concerns that we had.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion,
And
Mr.
Mr. Lockhart is second, Mr. Lockhart. So I know Mr. Malovich isn't here tonight to vote, so one of our alternates will be voting. Which alternate will be voting on this one? Sinead, will you be voting on this one? Okay.
I'll vote on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. So right now we have a motion on the floor with for the approval of the special permit. A motion's been made and second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, any opposition? Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion is approved. 5 in favor, none against for the special permit. So now we need a motion for the site plan.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan incorporating all of the conditions that were imposed on the special permit.
Okay, so we have the motion again made by Mr. Bichette to approve the site plan with the same conditions as outlined in the special permit. Do we have a second on that matter?
I'll second that as well.
Motion's made again by second by Mr. Lockhart. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair vote yes. Any opposition? Hearing none. So the special permit and the site plan are approved. I want to thank everybody very much. This has been a long and tedious application. I hope it works out for the best. Obviously, there's no always right answer what we're going to do, but I think we're trying to do what the best thing is move a little bit cautiously, and hopefully it works out. And I really appreciate all the letters that we've received, all the comments from the people, all the people staying up late at night to Zoom in and watch us. And taking their time away from the TV to watch the Patriots game. They're down
Oh,
6-3, but I wish everybody well. I wish the applicant well, and hopefully this thing will move along, and hopefully it'll be up and going. And hopefully, as I indicated earlier, when other recreational places open up, the traffic will minimize and things will work out. And again, I thank everybody for the input. And again, from everybody from the city of Lowell who helped, and Natasha did a lot of work on this, working with the engineers on both sides. And it's, as Jerry said earlier, it's not that often that all three traffic engineers come together and almost agree on something. And I think when they put the time and effort in, it makes it easier. I know for myself, as well as other board members, to help come to conclusion after we listen to them. As we know, even as Mr. Brown said, we're not the traffic engineers. We have to go by their guidance, and hopefully we do what's right with the information that's provided to us. I'm only an attorney as well, Mr. Brown, but I try to digest what people make references to and try to go by their guidance and try to make every project that comes before us in the city of Lowell a better project, and try to work with everybody in the city of Lowell to make these things better. So again, I thank everybody's patience and time, and thank the applicant. They put a lot of time and hard work in with all their people. I hope the thing works out well. Hope the monitor program comes together pretty well. But I think in the long run, we'll have a decent project, and I wish everybody well. Thank you.
Chairman,
everyone
thank
for
you
their
very
time.
much.
Thank you very much.
DPD
Thank you,
did
Mr.
a
Chairman.
fantastic job, and I appreciate all the attention to this project.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate the opportunity that we could be fully heard in opposition. I think a fair compromise has been reached, and I appreciate everyone's time and effort.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, Mr. Brown, I had no problem taking Mr. Dirk out of order. As I indicated, I told staff to let you know that. I said, obviously, I'm going to modify my board members. I am the chairperson, but I don't, what I do, consult with all the board members to see what their feelings are as well. And obviously with transparency, I know all the board members want to, hear from everybody to make the right decision. It makes it easier for us again. So I appreciate that request. I had no problem with it at all. I thought it was fair and reasonable. And hopefully you're satisfied with my answer on that.
I am. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So now we're going to move around to hopefully our last matter on the agenda. Okay, let me just get my notes ready for this one. And moving along, we have a site plan review amendment to 2 Prince Ave, 1 Markley Way. The Markley Group is seeking to amend a 2018 site plan review approval to expand the data center at 2 Prince Ave, 1 Markley Way. The data center is in the light industrial zoning district, and the applicant is seeking approval for outdoor water tanks and a relocation driveway in the northeast part of the property. The changes require site plan review approval under section 11.42, another relief required by the Lowell zoning ordinance. We did have this matter before us in the past. It has been continued to get further information. I know also the applicant had appeared before the Lowell City Council for other relief that's requested. So at this point in time, may we hear from the applicant, please?
Good evening. My name is Luke Kipfer. I'm a project manager with the Markley Group. We thank the board for their time tonight and hearing us again. We were in front of you during the last planning board meeting where we were able to hear the concerns from both the planning board and our neighbors. From that meeting, we took away a list of action items that we've been working on over for the past few weeks. We've also, as you said, been in front of the Lowell City Council for our fuel storage permit. We did receive approval from the Lowell Fire Department for the fuel storage permit, but not the City Council. We had several of the same abutters with the same concerns that were heard during the last planning board meeting. So since the City Council meeting, we did have a separate meeting, a Zoom call with the neighbors to help open some lines of communication between the Markley Group and have a better understanding of their concerns about this project. That was last Wednesday. Since that meeting, we've also tried to, continue discussion with several of the neighbors that spoke either during the meeting or spoke with us after the meeting to try and address some of their specific concerns. These meetings have definitely made it clear to the Markley Group that we need to improve our communications with our neighbors, improve our transparency. And, we're certainly working towards that now and committed to doing that in the future. Several of the comments during the last planning board meeting we've addressed via a letter from Stantec that was supplied to the planning board. I'd like to turn this over to Teo Kindermans of Stantec. He can run through that letter quickly, and then we're available to discuss any concerns about the letter or any additional comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Teo Kindermans. For the record, I'm a senior principal at Stantec, with an office in Boston, Massachusetts, where I haven't been in the last 7 months. As Luke said, and you all got the letter that I sent, and I don't want to go too deep into that, but I do want to run through the highlights pretty quickly. Water pressure that we discussed quite a bit during our last meeting, and Paul Pierce, the super superintendent, we had a meeting with him. He had he had a consultant, one of his consultants on the line as well, and we discussed everything with him. And I think he communicated to the planning department that he does not foresee any issues with water pressure in the area. Fuel storage, as far as it goes for the fire department's concerns, the fire department does not have any issues with the fuel storage. It really is in the city council hands for just neighborhood concerns, but the fuel storage itself, there isn't any concern. Generator emissions is we've been talking quite a bit about, as we've said, and there is an attachment to the memo from Eric Schlegel from a year or two ago, that sort of explains it a little bit. We are currently, although we're meeting and exceeding all of DEP's requirements, the governing body on generator emissions, we are currently investigating raising the smokestack. It's not as easy as it sounds. Like we'll just put a few feet on top of the smokestack and then we're fine. The performance of the generators will go down a bit. Structurally, it might not work. Funny as it sounds, no pun intended, it might be having a little bit of a negative effect on the sound that is being emitted. So we're investigating that. We are committed, and we would like to raise the stacks if that's a possibility. But it's not as easy as it sounds. But we're looking into that. Then the Andrews Street exit, as I described in the letter, it's the Markley Group's facility is highly secure. We have 24/7, 365 security at our main entrance. So the rear entrance, really, there is no permanent facility for security personnel to reside. There is no other infrastructure to check people's credentials. So it's going to be sort of the back door that's going to be used occasionally if really it's needed, and then it will need to be staffed by security personnel when the gate opens or closes. Fencing, we are planning on redoing the fencing along Bourne Street. Not quite sure whether that's going to happen this year, but we're looking into it happening next year. In the meantime, it is, I think, even as we speak, it's being the fencing is cleared up. Some of the vegetation that's there is being cleaned away. Some of the any rubbish that's there is being taken away. So that's being actively being worked on. And our water tank location and elevation, I think we beat that horse to that a little bit in our last meeting as well. We need to be on that main water line that's running through the site and right where equipment is that uses the water. We need to be at a higher elevation to reduce pumping. um, and reduce the possibility of any failures within the system. Excuse me. So it's really we need to be above ground to detect leaks and again to reduce our points of failure. So these were the points that I addressed in the letter. Since the letter was sent, a couple of things have transpired as well. As Luke mentioned, we had the meeting with the neighbors, a Zoom call last week, and some more lines of communication have opened up, and it's going to be a regular occurrence that there is going to be some talk between communication between Markley and the neighbors. And I know actually Luke tomorrow morning will go out and meet with one of the neighbors on their property. And second, and also we have released some of the landscaping that will be going in on top of the wall that's being built. Some of that will go in this fall. We need to really wait till the fence gets replaced before the rest of the landscaping gets in there. But some of them will go in, and then we're also starting to construct the berm behind the existing generators and the homes on Otis, I think. And that berm is being constructed, so there's going to be some more screening, and that will be landscaped also this fall. So that's happening now as well. So this was my sort of go running through the issues here quickly as I could. No, it's a long evening already, so hope this did it for you all, and we're very happy to answer questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant?
I think this is it.
Okay. Thank you. So at this point in time, I will turn it over to the public before I turn it over to the board. First, I'll start to see if anybody wants to speak in favor. Then I'll go in opposition, and then anybody who just has comment. Anybody like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Favor? Hearing none, I'll close that part. Anybody like to speak in opposition? Anybody like to have any comment? Any comments by any public matters?
Hi, yes, this is Jake Sports over here on Iowa Street, and I just want to hand it off to my mom who is standing by. She's got some comments and concerns.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. My name is Nancy Ports. I live on Iowa Street, and I would like to go back to this letter that was written by Eric Schlegel on 10/10/2018. It states that the senior health inspector, Sean Mercado, and local building inspector, Jose Negron, and Eric Schlegel observed the generators in operation. Markley said that the generators are run for 5 minutes each week to see if they are in working order. Also, that they are run 4 to 6 hours, 1 day a year. First, they are run on the weekends. Well, sometimes it's once a year, sometimes it's other times during the year. And one generator is run on a Saturday, and then the other generator is run on the Sunday. Now, my question is, when these other 2 generators come online, are you going to take 4 days to run each one at a time? And this thing about more than once a year, you have had the generators on the weekends. And the people from the city said that the staff stood halfway between the generators and the property line, and they claimed they could not smell the fumes. First, they were down below. Markley property is down below of my property. And they didn't come to my property, but they said they couldn't smell any fumes. But in my property, the fumes are collecting. So the test that they did down below wasn't accurate because it's my house and yard that are above this, and I am getting the fumes, and I cannot enjoy my yard because I never know when they run the generators. It is not the same day every week and is not at the same time. As I have stated before, they can do a lot more to improve this situation, whether it's raising the stacks or putting scrubbers in. I have kept a log of the time, so I know that it's different days at different times, and I know what they do on the weekends. And I can't be out in the yard because of the fumes. So what I'm asking you, again, that you would hold approval of the other generators until they fix the fumes on these two that are running now. And I also want to know too, why there's being dump trucks loaded with dirt being dumped opposite in the back of my house by the generators. They were doing this today. Is this going to be another storage area for dirt? But I thank you for your time, and these are my concerns.
Okay, thank you. Theo, is there anything you want to say about the dirt or anything else that you was mentioned?
Yeah, the dirt is,
This
the
is
dirt
Luke
is,
Kipper with Markley Group. Sorry, yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
Luke Kipper with Markley. If I could just
Okay, I'll let
jump
Luke
in.
go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Luke.
That's okay. So that dirt that they're moving over to the south side of the building is actually part of the landscaping and grading plan for that area. So, what we're doing on the site plan is building up that hill behind that separates between the generators and their house and then planting on top of it. So we're actually raising the grade to create a berm so they're not looking directly at the generator enclosures, and then there's screening that goes on top of that berm. So it's not a store pile for dirt. This is just the base layer. We'll be moving, this week. I was actually in contact with Jake to let him know that we were going to start this today. But we're starting to build up that grade to be able to create a better separation between our generators and the house, so we can then plant on top of it and maximize the effect of the the visual screening between the two properties. And then just real quick on the generators, we provide redundant power sources to our customers. So 4 generators don't mean they'd run 4 days in a row. It'd be, if we had to do some sort of our yearly shutdown, it'd be 2 generators one day, 2 generators the next day. It wouldn't be a sequentially, 4 days of 4 generator runs.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any concerns or comments they want to speak?
I would like to speak.
Sure. Name, please, and address.
Elaine Castle, 64 Otis Street, Lowell. I've been on several times, and I still have more than my share of questions. I was at the meeting the other day. I have not heard from anyone about coming to my house or having another meeting or doing anything like that. I did ask some of my neighbors. They haven't heard anything. I do know that they are speaking to one person. But my questions are, I see where the water towers got approved, so to speak. And I want to know, one of the things I'd like to know is, who do we speak to if there are issues with hot water pressure and that? Until it goes into effect, I'm not sure what we do.
I believe the city of Lowell gave a letter saying that there wouldn't be any problems with the water pressure.
Yes, they
Was
did.
that?
That's right.
Yep, so I guess you'd speak with the answer to your question would be to speak with the water department in the city of Lowell.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
No problem. Yeah, I mean, we went by the same guidance as they give us. I know this issue was raised multiple times at the last meeting, and that was the condition. I mean, not a condition, a concern that the board had, and that's why the board asked if we could try to narrow that issue down and get some answers on that. So the water department says, in their opinion, now it shouldn't be a concern. Hopefully that's correct. I hope it's right. I hope it's right.
Yep. That it's still 30 feet within my house is not a big issue. We were asking them to move them someplace, and that hasn't changed. We never got any answers to that. but.
No, we haven't voted on that yet. We haven't voted on the water towers.
We haven't heard that they were trying to move it anywhere else. I would like to know, if you could give me a time frame for the second water tower when it does go up. It says that at some point in time it will go. I mean, we seem to have, they say, no, we're not going to do this, and then the next week they're doing it. So I'm trying to find out what I should be looking at.
Well, I guess the first question would be is whether we're gonna approve their amendment first. So if we
Okay.
don't approve it, then the water towers don't go up, so you don't have to worry about a second tower.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
I
So
thought-
the main, so most of the things that are before us, is basically the water, the water towers and the changing of the parking lot. I know there was a lot of issues that were raised at the city council meeting. I've been informed by listening to staff, and they gave us a copy of basically what was discussed at the council meeting. I know they went into a subcommittee meeting, and I know from there, they're going back, and I know, the city council had a lot of concerns that was raised by a lot of the neighbors on these issues. So I know what, and I'll let either Luke or Theo correct me on this, what they told us in the past is their plans are to go forward on the first one. They're not sure when they'd have to go on the second one, if at all, but they are requesting for the two. But I think that what they've told us in the past, unless it's changed, and if I'm incorrect here, please correct me, either Luke or Theo, that they go on one first, see how that goes, and then sometime down the road, they'll go to the second one. But Luke, is that correct what I'm paraphrasing, or am I off by a bit?
Yeah, yes, sir, you're correct. So I'd love to give a more definite timeline, but it really depends on the type of tenants that end up leasing the space from us. There's some clients that do a lot of high performance computing that require, might require more cooling, that require more backup water storage. Other tenants are more of pure data storage and not necessarily processing power. Those type of clients require less of this water storage backup. So, it's the cloud computing environment and the tenants we deal with, it's a very dynamic environment that changes quickly. So at this point, we don't see a future need for this tower, but we'd like to go and ask for permission to be able to put one there, should we get a client requirement that we need to add it.
Thank you, thank you for that clarification, Luke. I appreciate that.
I apologize if I'm asking questions that I shouldn't ask. Right
That's okay,
now.
ma'am. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, no, let her go first, please, sir.
I would like to find out about the cooling towers. I know they're on the plan, the site plan. We never got into them before, but we did get into them somewhat on the city council meeting. And I've been looking them up. I don't know a lot about them. I know that they're going to be about 20 or 30 feet high. So I guess I won't have to worry about them because the water towers are going to cover them. But I do want to know about the emissions that comes from them, because my understanding is from one of the gentlemen that was at the council meeting, that was one of the issues for Legionnaire's disease. So I'm trying to find out what that would have to do with us, and should we be looking into it? Is it something that the city health department has to look at, or how do we find out about that? I didn't know anything
Luke,
about
will there be emissions coming from the water towers?
There's not emissions coming from the water towers.
Okay.
There's water vapor from the towers, but we maintain a rigorous chemical treatment program. These aren't any towers different than what you would see on top of a hospital or on top of buildings downtown. These are very standard cooling methods for larger facilities. So there's nothing harmful that would come as a result of the output of these towers.
So,
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, and see if
George Eliades, I sort of just sat back here because as you think most of you know, I've retired from the practice of the law now, but in the city, but I still remained as a consultant to the Markley people. And we very much went forward this past week with a meeting online, a Zoom meeting with the people. I know for a fact that two of the city councilors were there as well. And as a matter of fact, one of the councilors indicated that there was going to be a new group formed to represent the neighborhood, which I think is very good. And the Motley people agreed that they have probably not been in touch with the neighbors as much as they could have and should have. But I think it was pretty well made clear that that was going to change and that there would be actually very good opportunity if there's a new active group in the community, in the district, to try and facilitate things. We also talked to them about having more contact on a regular basis. I think I see Mr. Sneed, is that here? I think that's the gentleman's name. And he was one of the people, and yes, they haven't yet, but Selena, I think, is still on board, and I think Mr. Kipper is planning on seeing her tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. There's a huge difference now in the situation in terms of the company's connection with the neighborhood, or I believe there will be. And I think that's an important element in what's happening. On Ms. Castle's standpoint, the fact of the matter is, I know there've been discussions for her to sell her house to the company, and I don't know how that comes into play here. But those are issues that shouldn't be part of the process, I don't think. I think Selena's here, and Selena indicated the concerns that she had, and I know that Luke is going to be checking in with her. So I'm just pleased that a lot of positive things have come out of the meetings here, and that there's been sort of a wake-up call, shall we say, that it's more important to have a good collection of feelings between the neighborhood and whatever, and I think it can be done.
Well, Mr. Lighty, so just to, I know for the city council, you're going back before them. There was a lot of issue raised at the city council, and I know you're trying to address most of those issues that have been raised. Am I correct by saying that, or am I overstepping?
Yes, absolutely. As I said, two of the councilors were in the other meeting. One of the councilors came up and actually looked over the premises and understood, I think, what in fact was trying to be done. And I think that I can say that we've come a long way in that regard too, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the issues of the fuel storage will be dealt with and be handled.
So a lot of the issues that the council looked at a lot more broader than what we're limited to tonight on the site plan review of just the water tanks and the parking.
They're just concerned with the additional storage of fuel.
Okay.
Basically, and how that may come into play. But they did obviously have the council members individually. Some of them had concerns about some of the matters that have come up here tonight. And I think after Wednesday's Zoom meeting, I think we've all come up with a strategy to try to help that situation.
So you're trying to address a lot of the issues that were raised at the council as well, instead
Correct.
of just limited to what the request for the storage was.
Correct, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Okay. Anybody else like to speak at this time?
Yeah, this is Selena from Bourne Street, and Luke is coming out to meet with myself tomorrow morning, which I'm really anticipating. I'm very pleased that he had reached out to me and set up this meeting to address some of the concerns that I'm having as I abut Prince Ave up on a hill, and the smokestacks are situated much lower than my residence, and the way they are, the smoke would just be coming directly into my yard window. So he was very kind enough to set up a meeting, walk my yard so we could actually address the issue, see where I'm coming from, and many of the other neighbors with the smell that this smokestack would cause on the neighborhood. So I just wanted to address that I am very thankful that he is coming out so he can actually walk the property, see the wind flow as I'm up on the hill, and it's a wind tunnel where we're situated up on top of Markley Group. So, you know, again, I'm very pleased and very thankful that he is coming out to meet with me and walk the property and stuff, and try to come together as neighbors, as we all should be coming together.
Thank you.
So I just
Thank you very
wanted to
much.
thank him for that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Hello, this is Randall Sneed, and I live at 63 Otis Street. As has been noted tonight on a couple occasions with generators and everything, I realize that that is going to be voted on more at the city council, so that the Markley Group brought it up here in this session. So I feel I should speak to it too. That the existing towers that they have, that they have made some concession saying that they are trying to figure out ways to do, which has been going on for greater than 4 years, that is still persisting. It's some of this is a show of good faith and everything that they need to have, that they're moving forward with true action plans of how to correct some of the things, because the others are that, correct me if I'm wrong, are you not voting on the cooling towers along with the water towers that are going on tonight?
We're just voting on the 2 water towers and the relocation of the parking plan. That was what was submitted under the site plan amendment.
Right.
Okay, so it wasn't the complete site plan that they had initiated with
Nope,
all
this
the
is-
other things.
Nope, this is an amendment to the site plan that they brought in. They came in before to see if it was a minor modification. At that point in time, the board had a lot of comments, questions, concerns. After about 45, 50 minutes of discussion, the applicant at that point in time withdrew the request for the minor modification, and then they came in for a site plan review amendment for the 2 water towers and to change the parking location. And that's what's been before us in the past, and that's what's currently in front of us now.
I was just going based off of the site plans that they actually put out. All these other things were on that site plan that they posted in that, showing that those 7 cooling towers were going to be in place, along with the modification from how the parking plan was, and and the possible future of 2 water towers down the road was there. If they are moving forward with those cooling towers at this same time that they're doing this, then what is, as Ms. Castle stated in this, is there any kind of risk for health off of that has to be weighed in on? And is there any noise that comes with those cooling towers that are going to be running, especially during the summer months, on a regular basis? And then as to the generators that they currently have in existence, that they haven't shown complete good faith in about trying to fix the issues that have especially been affecting the residents on Iowa Street, and that the Fortis family spoke to tonight. And then having 2 more generators that they're planning on bringing in and establishing over here on the corner of Horn side, that many of us other residents are going to be experiencing the same exact effects that have been happening on those others.
Luke, do you want to respond to that, or any comments you have in regards to what was brought up by Randall?
Yeah, absolutely. If I could just start with the south side generators, we have actually extended the SAC since they've been installed on site. So these originally came with a standard 10-foot stainless steel exhaust stack. We have already added an extension. We brought them up to like 18 feet right now. Actually, I don't know if I can share my screen. I can show you a picture of what we've done so far. And we are, still going back and trying to we understand there's still concerns from the neighbors, so we're still trying to go back, rerun these models. Like I said, but especially the concerns with the neighbors, we've pushed up the landscaping and the berming and some of the screening on that side of the site to try and get that to start immediately, frankly. So I think the neighbors might not be seeing progress as quickly as they'd like to see, but certainly we are moving forward with whatever we can to try and resolve this issue. Peo touched on it a little bit briefly, and we actually have our consultants from VHB on the call if we need them. But as Peo said, there's chances that we could raise the stack height. It has very little impact on the actual particulate dispersion, but ends up just making the generators louder. So we're trying to run through. They've got computer models that run through the the air quality, the particle dispersion, the noise, to really be able to tell if we do add stack height, what's the right stack height and how that we do it. So we are looking at that again. We are running that again, but we have already tried one mitigation option, since these generators have been installed. And just back to the cooling towers, these are, standard cooling towers. The cooling water for our building is, part of our critical components. So we do maintain a very rigorous chemical treatment regimen for these towers. So there's no health risk or anything from the water vapor that is pushed out from these towers. And we are working again with our consultant VHB to ensure that obviously there will be some noise associated with these towers, but that we're well within the limits set forward by Mass DEP and the city of Lowell for our sound level at the property line.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak?
Hi there. So this is Jake Forts, 36 Iowa Street. So I know, based on what you had said a little while ago, Mr. Linehan, I think that some of the neighbors were under the wrong impression given some of the documents that were uploaded into the folder for this site plan review. Because there was a lot of changes to the actual site plan outside of the two that you are talking about having before you. So I think that's where some of the confusion is coming from, perhaps, because there was a lot of changes between the site plans. And as you guys have heard me say before, I believe Mr. Frechette even pointed it out in the last meeting that the Markley Group had ended up with the four generators on the south side of the property. And they never went for another site plan review after that. So we've been fighting this pretty much since that time frame that initial change was made. Now, whether or not, where we have gone in these last 5 years since Markley has come to town, and good faith efforts. So I just want to touch upon that. So if you guys recall, in 2018, the Markley Group came before you and asked for some additional modifications to be done. At that time, you agreed with the Conservation Commission that they were to fix the south side of the property before they were to proceed forward with any other construction on the property. That was in 2018. They promised to do it in January 2019. I stand before you today and they're saying that they're now going to be doing the landscaping that they started very much today to come before you and say that they have actually met their requirement. So if they hadn't, done it today, then they actually would have been out of adherence of what you told them to do in 2018. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that, yes, I think we have finally gotten through to the Markley Group that, now that it's not just me versus, the Markley Group every time they go up for something to try and get this fixed, now that there's actually a whole community that is seeing this problem with the emissions. I think pretty much Eileen's alone, unfortunately, with regards to the actual water towers. I said before in the last meeting, I'm not opposed to them going in because I've done the research on them. They're just going to be an eyesore for her, but overall, they're not really an issue. However, what I have an issue with tonight is basically just the overall lack of good faith that has happened in the past, that things that were supposed to be done have not been done. And as a result, it's like, okay, so if we okay this now, then what's to say that they won't stop construction tomorrow on doing the screening behind my house, which was actually already supposed to be done. And what's to say that they'll stop doing the generator modifications, because the generator modifications, the one that Luke had mentioned, was actually put in place because the Mass DEP found what VHB had recommended initially for an installation didn't meet the requirements of proper exhausting it didn't have the force to keep the little flap thing on the top of it up. So that's the reason why those funnels were installed. It wasn't something done out of the kindness and compassion of Markley Group. It was done because they were forced to do it by the Mass DEP. So as you can see, I'm having a little, I'm a little torn. I'm not against the water tanks, which I have before you here, but I'm a little torn with the good faith efforts in making sure that we need to somehow or other keep their feet to the fire and actually see that they're going to fix the problems with the emission. So I don't think that could be within the purview of what you guys have before you tonight, but if you could somehow or other tie that in, that would be great.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that very much.
I recall, if I may, thanking Jake at the last time we had a Zoom meeting about this, and he's right. But as he's noted, there have been things fixed along the way. In addition to that, all of the work that's been done has been complied with all the regulatory authorities that are involved in this. These are things that are somewhat pest kind of things, and I know they're more than pest. But if there was a greater connection between the company and the neighbors over the last couple of years, I think they could have been and would have been fixed faster. And I feel confident now that those things are in place now to take care of. So, yes, Jake, thanks. I know, as you can see, things are, I think, different now, and the proof is in the pudding. And everybody now has Luke's name and knows that if they have a complaint with the company, they can get to him. And I think it's going to change the dynamic.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else?
Could I say something else?
Sure.
I guess I'm just confused because I really thought that all of this information was on the cooling towers, on everything that was down there, because when I looked at the plans, that's what they were. Maybe Jake can let us know if that's what you're voting on. I didn't know you were just voting on the water towers and the parking. I thought it was on the cooling towers and everything else. Anything that's down there. I mean, they're working every day. They were working on Saturday, and they were working till 7 o'clock at night. We haven't had any time. I mean, they didn't work this Sunday. I can say that, but they do. I mean, they did stay late last week until 7 o'clock at night. So it's 7 in the morning till 7 at night. We hear banging. We hear all of that stuff. So I know they're trying. I do know that, and I'm going to say that. I do understand they are trying to be good neighbors. But until we get some result, I think that Jake Forte says a good answer for that. You know, he's been waiting for years. What I thought years ago, in year 18, I went to the meeting. I thought that we were going to have flowers and trees up here. We don't have that. All the dirt is gone. They took all the soil away to put all this other stuff in that they decided that was what they were going to do in this side of the building. I just would like to understand if that is the circumstances and that is what it's going to be. I would like to know what you are voting on tonight. If it's water and parking, that's fine. I understand it. I just want it clarified so I know what's going on.
Just, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lice. Could, because honestly, Mr. Chairman, what was submitted was this full site plan with, and I would like clarification from Jared, because what's being submitted, and granted, I believe, the fire department has to sign off, which I believe they have, and then they need final approval by the city council, which apparently was continued, apparently. But the site plan we have before us incorporates all those changes. I just want to, could we defer that to Jared for a second? Because I want clarification on that, because the site plan that's before us, and I've got it up online, and I'm looking at it on my other computer, I just want to make sure, because that's the complete site plan has those other modifications. So I just, Jared, if you could give us clarification, if we vote and that's what they've presented, unless we just vote on a segment of the site plan subject to, I mean, the city council is going to vote for the licensing, but we're going to vote for how it all lays out on the site. So I need clarification on that myself, please.
Sure, Member Frechette. So the site plan that they've submitted, the latest version of it would be the one that the board would be voting on. You can choose to only approve certain elements of that site plan before a site plan review. The things that show up on the plan itself would be the things that you would be voting to approve their location of.
Right, so
and think about it for any other project, if you wanted them to install different signage, use gates or things, you can suggest edits to the site plan that would be a required condition, and you could have a new site plan submitted afterwards. But if you were to just vote on it based upon what is presented in the site plan, what appears there would be the things
What
that
we
they would be
approved,
allowed to
is
do.
that correct? Yeah, so that would be approved in its entirety.
That's
As
correct.
presented, yeah, so that's, we want to be careful about that this evening. We're not voting on just the towers and the park. We're voting on what's been presented in its entirety. I just want to make sure we need to break. Okay, and I think that. now
I
we
mean,
can
so,
move.
yeah, so the concern I have, I mean, basically, when you look at what they're requesting on the
Right. No,
application,
I understand that, Mr. Chairman, but.
yeah, I
so-
get that.
but if we
And we were
vote,
here, and
we
we were here
vote,
before.
I understand.
Right, and we were here before, we
Right.
continued it because we were addressing only those two separate issues.
Right.
So I mean, if they submit a new set of plans now, and those have not been approved by all our departments, we haven't got our department feedback from everybody else. Obviously, that's a whole different ballgame. But you know, as the advertisement, as I read it, were the two things. When we were here last time, we discussed the length, the heights of the towers, the colors of the towers, why they can't be painted a different color. We had the balloon test. And so basically this was a continuation from the last meeting for the towers and the parking. So as far as I'm concerned, I would think that we're limited to that, and I'd be willing to just take that one issue up. If they want to change other issues, I think they have to come back for another site plan amendment.
Yeah.
That's the way.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we submitted a full site plan couple 3 months ago. And at the first hearing about that site plan, I did run through every change that we made on that site plan with an overlay, and I can pull up the PDF if you want. But we were upfront. We've ran through the whole gamut of changes that we were making with this site plan set as compared to site plan set that is currently approved. And so all of these issues were addressed at that point in time.
So was that the last meeting or when you came in for the modification? So the last meeting, we basically spent the majority of the meeting on the water tower.
Correct. The neighbors focused discussion on the water towers, but before that,
So you want the water towers plus everything else that you threw in the site plan?
I did a presentation at the last meeting, the first, when we opened up the meeting for the modification of this site plan. I did a presentation showing what was approved and what we would like to change. And we went through through several locations out on the site, how to generate a yard.
Yeah.
I had what was approved. I had what we wanted to. I had an overlay in red. I had that for the water tower location and the cooling equipment location. I had that for every location, and we ran through that.
Okay. I get that, but so when the advertisement, you didn't ask for all that. You just asked for the water towers and changed the parking.
Because those were the highlights of it.
Okay, well, the highlights, we should have asked for everything. I mean, when people come on the agenda, and I read the agenda notice, when you said you're looking for the approval of the water towers and the parking location, you didn't ask for approval of anything else under the notice. So under the notice, if you want, no, my turn.
Sorry.
Okay, my turn. If you want to come in with other conditions, other approvals, they should have been on the advertisement. These people raise issues. What are we voting on tonight? I'm under the impression we're voting on the water towers and not what you alluded to last time. You're making improvements here, you're making improvements there. Some of those improvements require site plan review, some of them don't. So you can't throw us a blanket request. We want all these things done, but we're only advertising for 2. So if that's the case, we either vote for 2 or we table it and come back with a whole new site plan review. That's my opinion.
We requested a site plan modification.
Yeah, for water towers and parking. It's right here in your advertising.
No, and it's, but it.
Yes, it's in the advertising. That's what's advertised for tonight's meeting. We spent at length the water tower. But you come in and say, okay, well, we're gonna do this, this, and this. You didn't request that on the site plan review. You come in for minor modification just for the water tower. Then staff brought up the parking. So that's changed. And now you go into all these other things and say, okay, let's throw everything against the wall and see what the planning board approves. I don't think it's advertised fairly. I don't think it's on there. I don't think we should have a right to vote on it because it's not advertised properly and people don't know what's coming in front of us. That's my opinion. So you can say whatever else you want, but the issue that we spent at length on whether it's a minor modification in the last meeting was 90% on the water tower. But you say, well, I threw all this other stuff in, but you didn't advertise it, requesting other relief, then I don't think it's a fair advertisement. I don't think it's fair notice. I don't think it should be properly done before the board. I think you're lacking in notice. And for you to say, well, I addressed those, that doesn't make a difference to me. It should have been on the advertisement. It comes into notice requirement, comes into being fair and transparent. So that's my opinion. But so as far as I'm concerned, we can either continue it, we can either vote just on the water towers. If you want to come back with the other modifications, I think you have to come in with a new site plan. That's all I have to say. Anybody else? It was supposed to be simply vote on the water towers and the landscape. That's what the request was when you came in for the modern modification. If you go and change everything on the plan and say, I want all this now, and you didn't advertise it, that's not fair notice. So the notice requirement has not been met. I wonder why all the people are asking us what we're voting for. So as far as I'm concerned, my issue is with the water tower and the parking. That's the only thing I'm willing to vote on. I'm not voting on anything else. Not until I hear from all the other city departments. So. Any of the board members have any questions or anybody else have anything? So, I mean, just to say, oh, I addressed these, but it's not in the advertisement. So therefore, it's not properly in front of us. Yes, Caleb, go right ahead, please, sir.
So my understanding is when they submitted the minor modification, they have a red laid over plan, like, so the red lines indicating the changes dated in July, and that includes like the water towers. But then when they move to the site plan review amendments, I have a site plan dated in August 13th that includes more cooling towers, but otherwise pretty similar to the July plan, but there are some differences. But on the other hand, what you said is true. The advertisement for the September meeting only mentioned about outdoor water tanks and a relocated driveway. So the other changes, such as the additional cooling towers, are not mentioned in the advertisement.
So I don't know what the board requested, but I'm not voting on the other modifications on the site plan. I mean, if we advertise one thing and now we're voting on something else, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right. I don't think it meets the open meeting requirement laws. I don't think it meets the advertisement law. I mean, like I said, we took you out of order last time when we came in for modification. I took you out of order in front of everybody else, and we spent almost 50 minutes on it, and everything was all talk about the water towers, water towers, water towers. And then you give us a site plan, you can put all these other changes on it, but you don't come in asking for that relief in your application, and now you just give it to us and say, well, we want you to approve all this too, but your advertisement has not changed. You still ask for just the outdoor water tanks and the relocation of the driveway in the northeast part of the property line.
Right.
So,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm going to suggest, if I may, that perhaps it's in the best interest of the discussion tonight. And the point I think that Mr. Fisher has made is well taken. I think there's probably an argument that the plan itself, as Theo was said, was submitted in its entirety. But probably, and I think you, Mr. Chairman, made mention before of the fact that this matter still is going to in part go before the city council, which I think is their next meeting next week. Perhaps it will be an opportunity to try and clean up the rest of the process here. Unless Mr. Fischett is saying this has to go back and be totally re-advertised. I don't know if that's what he's saying. I think they submitted a plan for a modification of the site plan in its entirety. That's what was submitted. Maybe the language wasn't clear as it should have been on the application itself. That's up to the board to decide. But it's obviously of no value or interest to anybody this evening, in my humble opinion, to force any kind of a vote at this point. Let's back off and have the people meet with the DPD as far as that part of it goes, and maybe the board can render an opinion as to what they'd like to see, and that might be very helpful.
Jerry, do you want to comment on that? If not, then I'll.
Yeah,
comment
Mr. Chairman, I think, and I'm not going to speak for you, but as the chairman, I think what you articulated is that perhaps it should be reposted so that it's the application reflects what's being requested. So
what I would request would be that we continue the matter. We can go forward with the same site plan. But let's just make sure that in all transparency, that they change the language on what they're requesting for the site plan to include X, Y, and Z.
now,
Not
does
just
that,
limited to the water tanks and the parking. That's all.
no, I will contend that the applicant submitted a site plan with the changes. Jared, from a procedural perspective, what supersedes here? The verbiage or the actual plan that was submitted?
We're starting to get into case law about notice, which I am not an expert.
Well, legally, I'll
it
take
does-
you on the case law, and I'll say the notice, it has to be transparency. And I don't think this is transparent on the notice.
So
I
then,
think we vote on this, we're gonna be turned over for lack of notice. That's
so
my
Mr. Chairman, so based on that, and that's, I guess, where I was headed, just trying to take us all there, then what I think would be best for all parties concerned, as well as the applicant, so that there's not a cloud over any decision that's made, that it be properly advertised, and we start that process.
Yeah, I mean, they can give the same site plan, but when they come in, just advertise exactly what they're requesting, not limited to the water towers and the parking, that's all.
Right.
I mean, because I was under the assumption, and I remember when Teo talked about that in the past and stuff, I said, yeah, I understand all that, but the advertisement is limited to what we're looking for here. I think, I mean, I know we put in any other relief that they requested. Personally, I don't think we should put in that any other relief as requested, because I don't think that's transparency. And I have issues with the planning staff putting that in. I don't think they should put that in. I think they should only put in what the applicant is asking for. Instead of saying, hey, I'm gonna throw in this catch-all phrase, they come in and ask for everything. That's not fair to the people reading the notices. And I don't like the way it's written. I didn't like the way when we changed it to begin with. That's what the planning staff got from their direction. But personally, I don't think you should throw in any other relief. So therefore they can come in, oh, by the way, I want this, this, and this. And all the neighbors said, well, if I knew that was gonna come down the road, I might have zoomed in, I might have spoke about it. But the any other relief part on the notice to me is way too vague, and I don't think it belongs there. That's my opinion. And
So-
I know we just started doing that recently. We haven't done it in the 36 years that I've been on the board until probably the last year or so. And I know we've had other people who've questioned that before us when we've had the meetings on, and people who used to be past planners in the city of Lowell have questioned it when they've been before us. So I would request that they continue it and come in with the proper verbiage, And if they want to use the same site plan, I have no problem with it, but at least give the notice properly so everybody understands exactly what we're voting.
Okay, so for clarification, then I guess what we would be coming out of this meeting is that the applicant has to repost for a public hearing, requesting the actual modifications that they are looking for the entire site plan. Yep, and I would, I guess, Mr. Chairman, we'd be looking for a motion for that, or is that?
Yes, I think, they can pick whatever date they want to come back. I don't think it's gonna take them long to change the verbiage for that. Am I wrong on that, Mr. Lides?
But I believe they'll have to post in the newspaper and post to the abutters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, correct. But I think it has to be, like I say, the notification. So I don't know how much time that will take.
Hopefully your next meeting, I think, would.
So, I mean, I know we have to put it in the newspaper at least 2 times. Right, Jared? It's a minimum of 2.
Yeah, there would not be enough time for the second meeting in October.
No, so you're talking November.
It'd be the November 2nd meeting.
November 2nd, yeah.
Okay, so I
Can I
guess I
ask?
would, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, I was just gonna ask, if we are reposting and kind of resubmitting the application, that the applicant provides that same overlay, so it's really highlighting in red what was changed from the approved site plan and what's being requested, so it really highlights the changes. I think the DPD staff did a good job in their memo outlining where all those changes were, but I think that would help with clarity.
I agree, absolutely. And this way, we'll get more feedback from more parts of the city departments, hopefully. And just for clarification, everybody knows exactly what we're voting on.
So, Mr. Chairman, I put that in the form of a motion that the applicant repost reflecting all of the modifications that they're requesting on the site plan.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Lockhart. I know Russell's voting on this matter because Sinead voted on the last one. So we have a motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, that motion carries. Hopefully, if it's posted properly, we'll be on the November 2nd meeting. If it's not posted by then, it'll be a later date. But hopefully for people who are watching, hopefully it'll be on November 2nd. And hopefully on that date, it'll be very clear to all people attending that will know exactly what's before the board and what request is being requested for relief for the amendment as site plan amendment review.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, to the applicant, in an effort of good faith, it would go a long way for me anyways, is I was quite surprised when I went out to the site and the landscaping did not progress as much as it should have. And I'm happy to hear that they've started the berm for the plantings where those generators are. But I would suggest to the applicant to make a lot of headway between now and that next meeting towards that landscaping, because that would provide the buffer for the residents as well from a visual perspective. And that's one of the issues we're dealing with, is the visual buffer. And when you take a look at the Lowe's that went in along Chelmsford Street, and you look at the amount of plantings that are along that street, so that the residential neighbors across the street don't have to view that. So anyways, I just offer that to the applicant. If you really want to make a good faith effort, I want to see it in some results. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So that motion been approved. That matter's been, will be continuing to come back to us in the future. Thank you very much. Okay, moving along on the agenda. We do have, let's see, we have the 2021 meeting schedule. What's the request of the board on that?
Well, I hope 2021 is better than 2020, Mr. Chairman.
I hope you're correct on that, Mr. Fischel.
I'll make a motion to approve the schedule.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Motion to make the approval second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That matter is, thank you, Beth. That matter is approved. I do want to mention, as I mentioned earlier, I want to thank Natasha for all her help for us, and wish her good luck on a new career with the MBTA. And again, I want to thank Natasha very much on that. And I know that Jared has some information I'd like to share with the board.
Well, first, before we do that, Mr. Chairman, I just want to note that we have no agenda items for the October 19th meeting. So if you'd like, you could cancel that meeting. We're past the deadlines for it, but I just want to let you know that now that we know that no items have been continued to that meeting. So that's the second meeting in October, October 19th.
Okay, we'll take that up right after you finish with your announcement.
Sure. So I have recently accepted a position with the city of Alexandria, Virginia. So I will be unfortunately moving on from the city of Lowell at the end of this month. I've really enjoyed my 3 years working for the city. I can't believe it was just 3 years ago, and I came in as an assistant planner, and I've had a lot of fun working with all of you and getting just tremendous amounts of experience with all these different projects from all sorts of scale that go before your board, the zoning board, and the conservation commission. And I will miss working with all of you as well.
Jared, I know on behalf of the whole board, but I'll let them speak as well, but I want to thank you very much for your hard dedication, and you've turned minutes around faster than anybody we ever seen in the past, right, Jerry?
Mr. Chairman, I actually offered him a job if he wanted it at one point in time.
Well, I wish you well, and I'm sure the other board members are going to wish you well as well.
Wish you well, Jared.
Good luck, Jared.
Thanks for all your work, Jared.
Good luck. And
Yeah,
if you ever need anything from us, give us a call back. You know where to find us. You know, you need a recommendation, or if they call in, want to know if we know you. We will definitely concur with that. So we wish you well. And so do you have a final date with us?
Friday, October 30th.
Okay. Well, good luck. We wish you well.
Thank you.
So,
Absolutely.
So hopefully Fran will have more people to work with between now and then, because it's tough for any planning staff member to be solo. So
well,
I know
my position has been posted. So if people out there listening are interested, the senior planner position is open for applications.
And do you anticipate Fran getting any help in the interim from anybody internally?
There is an opportunity for people like Christine McCall and Joe Jinowitz, who both have handled meetings in the past, and so they might come and help. But there's also only 8 meetings in November and December, and Fran, as she reminded us, went to every single meeting when she first started with the city. So she's also thinks at the moment that she might be able to just do those 8, but we'll see though as the fall goes on.
Well, tell Fran we're here for anything if she needs us. Again, Jared, good luck. We wish you well.
Thank you, Jared.
So moving along,
Yeah,
if we don't have anything on the agenda for the October 19th meeting, I'd be willing to make a motion that we not meet on that night, if that's an agreement with all board members.
Probably have a group second on that one, Mr. Chairman.
I think we've been putting our time in on most of these lengthy meetings. So especially the 2 marijuana ones that we went through tonight, which took a long time getting there.
That's great.
So, does any other board members have any follow-up comments on anything as a result of the boards that they sit on or anything?
The historic board has not met. It's been very quiet, and we have not scheduled an October meeting yet. With the holiday on the 12th, it normally follows on that night. That's all.
Okay, here none, we could entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made in second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned, everybody. Good night, and thank you very much. I appreciate all the work and help. Again, thank you, Jared. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.